Hey everybody, it's me, Strange, your boy in the shadows, the one guy who knows every single filthy secret the stars are desperately trying to bury 6 feet under in this rotten town we call Hollywood. And I'm sitting right here across from you in my usual dimly lit corner with the blinds pulled tight, a cold cup of coffee on the desk, and piles of leaked texts, deleted voice notes, private emails, court filings, old interview tapes, and whispered stories from people who are still terrified to go on record because the industry has a way of making problems disappear. And listen up, because what I'm about to lay out for you is not some quick recap of who wore what on the red carpet. This is a full-blown, high-stakes crime thriller investigation into the BAFTA 2026 fashion disasters, zeroing in on Teyana Taylor's jaw-dropping Vera Wang creation that had the entire world stopping mid-scroll. Vera Wang herself showing up in her own wild reinvention, the insane cost versus the catastrophic result, the stylist feuds that turned vicious behind the scenes, the people who tried way too hard to stay relevant, and the brand sponsorship deals that are basically golden handcuffs wrapped in couture. We're talking millions of dollars changing hands, egos bigger than the gowns, bodies being squeezed and critiqued like meat at a butcher shop, and careers hanging in the balance, all for one night of flashbulbs and hashtags. And we're gonna reconstruct every single moment like a movie, room by room, text by text, betrayal by betrayal, until you see the raw truth of how the global entertainment machine really works when the cameras are rolling and the money is flowing. Let me pull you right into that freezing February 22nd, 2026 night in London, so you feel like you're standing there on the South Bank with the rain misting your face and the paparazzi screaming in your ears. The Royal Festival Hall is glowing like a beacon against the grey sky, the Thames River sliding by dark and oily, the red carpet laid out wet and shiny under the spotlights, security in black suits with earpieces looking nervous, the air thick with the smell of wet pavement, expensive perfume drifting off the arriving stars, cigarette smoke from the smokers huddled under umbrellas, and that electric buzz of anticipation mixed with pure anxiety because everybody knows one bad angle can end a career. The paparazzi pens are packed 10 deep, lenses pointed like weapons, voices hoarse from yelling names all evening. Then, right on schedule, a blacked out Range Rover with tinted windows glides up, the door swings open slow, and out steps Teyana Taylor, 35 years old, fresh off a career-defining turn in Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, where she played a complex broken woman fighting her demons, earning that Best Supporting Actress nomination that had the whole industry buzzing that she was finally getting her flowers. She's got her hair in a sleek low bun with soft face framing tendrils, makeup flawless with that signature bold red lip and smoky eye that makes her look powerful and vulnerable at the same time. But the outfit, oh man, the outfit is where everything goes off the rails in the most public way possible. This was not a gown. This was a $350,000 Gothic vampire opera cloak hybrid, custom made by Vera Wang, that looked like it was designed to eat the wearer alive. The base was heavy Italian black velvet that cost $8,000 a meter alone, cut in sharp architectural lines with blood red silk panels slashing through it like open wounds, dripping with thousands upon thousands of hand-placed Swarovski crystals and silver hardware that caught the flashbulbs and threw light in every direction like warning signals. The collar was the star of the horror show, this enormous, aggressively rouged and sculpted rose structure standing over 12 inches tall, with internal boning and layers of organza and velvet wrapping around her neck and chin so high it literally swallowed the lower half of her face and forced her head into this awkward tilted back position like she was permanently looking down on the peasants. Every time she turned her head to pose, the collar shifted and cast these deep shadows across her features that made her look hidden and almost menacing under the harsh lights. The bodice was cinched so tight with ruching and pleating that it created these weird puckers and folds that bunched up around her waist and hips, highlighting every little curve in the worst possible way, the kind of thing that looks sculptural in the atelier but turns into a mess when real movement and London humidity hit it. The high slit on the left side revealed those thigh-high cherry red patent leather boots with silver buckles and pointed toes that were supposed to scream sexy power, but ended up looking like they belonged on a dominatrix who lost her way to a Tim Burton set. The train was long and heavy, dragging behind her like dead weight, catching on the carpet and forcing her to do these little awkward tugs and adjustments that the cameras caught in high definition and the internet zoomed in on for days. She stepped forward, one boot hitting the wet carpet, then the other, her smile snapping into place like armor, but you could see the hesitation in her shoulders for half a second before the professional mask locked in. The paparazzi were screaming, "Teyana, over here! Give us a turn, look this way!" And she did the obligatory poses, one hand on her hip, the other holding the train. But the collar kept blocking half the shots, and the ruching made the fabric pull in all the wrong directions, creating these unflattering lumps and shadows that made her look like she was wearing a costume from a rejected haunted house attraction. I have the leaked text chain right here, straight from one of her inner circle to the publicist, timestamped 2 hours and 12 minutes before she stepped out of that SUV. Quote, "The collar is eating her alive. It's taller than we signed off on. Vera's team is refusing to trim it because, quote, it is the signature dramatic element," unquote. Teyana just sent me a voice note saying I look like a rejected extra from a Tim Burton fever dream, and this thing is choking my confidence. The boots are popping, but the whole silhouette is off by a mile. We are so fucked if the photos come out bad. Then the reply from the publicist. "Too late, the car is pulling up now. Smile through it, we'll call it avant-garde in the interviews, and spin the narrative later. Protect the bag at all costs." And there's another one from a junior stylist in the group chat. "She keeps tugging at the collar when she thinks no one is looking. This is not the empowering look we promised her after the nomination. I feel sick." Come on, we all know that's the kind of message that gets deleted the second the first flash hits, but I never delete anything. That's why you come to Dirty Hollywood, for the real talk. Let's slow it all the way down and reconstruct the scene like we're watching the security footage in slow motion with the audio turned up. The SUV door opens, the rain mist hits her bare shoulders, she takes that first step out, one cherry red boot sinking slightly into the wet carpet, the heavy train pulling behind her like an anchor. Her face lights up with the $1 million smile, but her eyes are tight, the collar forcing her chin up so she can't even look down at her feet without the fabric digging in. She turns to the left for the first bank of cameras, the crystals exploding with light, but the ruching on the bodice bunches up under her arm and creates this weird ripple that the zoom lenses catch immediately. She laughs at something the paps yelled, but the laugh is short, cut off by the collar restricting her movement. Then the turn to the right. The train catches on a seam in the carpet. She has to do this little hop tug that looks graceful from far away, but up close you can see the strain in her posture. The smell in the air around her is a mix of her signature jasmine perfume, the wet velvet starting to get that heavy damp wool scent, and the faint metallic tang of the crystals. Her team is hovering just off camera, faces pale, whispering into earpieces, one of them holding an umbrella that they can't even use because it would ruin the shot. She poses for a group shot with other nominees, the collar making her look taller than everyone else, but also somehow smaller inside it, like the dress is wearing her instead of the other way around. The whole thing lasts 47 seconds on the carpet before she moves inside, but those 47 seconds were enough to launch 1,000 memes, 1 million tweets, and the kind of public dissection that can make or break a moment. And here's where shit gets truly fucked up right from the jump. This wasn't some last-minute decision. This was a calculated 7-figure sponsorship play that went wrong in the most spectacular way. And to understand why Teyana, a woman who has always been known for her effortless, cool, and body-positive vibe, ended up trapped in that monster collar, we have to go all the way back to the very beginning of her life, to the streets of Harlem, where the foundation for everything was laid in struggle, rhythm, and that unbreakable determination that would later get tested in the most brutal ways by this industry. Teyana Taylor came into the world on December 10th, 1990 in the heart of Harlem, New York City, to a mom named Donna Taylor, who was grinding multiple jobs just to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. Her dad was mostly out of the picture, so it was Donna, Teyana, and her younger brother in a cramped one-bedroom apartment where the heat sometimes cut out in the winter and the walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors arguing. Money was so tight that there were weeks they ate cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row, and Donna would work double shifts cleaning houses in the fancy parts of the city, coming home exhausted with her hands raw from the chemicals, but she always made sure Teyana had clean clothes for school and a little money for the dance studio. Harlem in the early 90s was rough as hell, the crack epidemic still leaving scars on every block, stop and frisk on every corner. Kids Teyana's age joining gangs for protection or just to feel like they belong to something. But little Teyana chose the studio instead of the streets. From the time she could stand, she was moving to the music, copying routines from the old TV in the living room, her tiny body hitting every beat with this natural power that made adults stop and stare. By age 2, she was doing full dances for family gatherings, and by age 6, Donna had scraped together enough from side gigs to enroll her in ballet and hip-hop classes at a local community center studio on 125th Street. The studio was nothing fancy, cracked linoleum floors, mirrors with spots missing, the smell of sweat and old wood. The teacher, a no-nonsense woman named Miss Evelyn, who had danced in off-Broadway shows back in the day. Miss Evelyn saw the spark in Teyana immediately and took her under her wing, giving her extra classes for free when Donna couldn't pay, pushing her to train 6 days a week, sometimes 7. Teyana would finish school, run to the studio, practice until her feet bled in the point shoes, then help her mom with cleaning gigs on the weekends, carrying buckets and rags while dreaming of the day she could perform on a real stage. People who were there back then swear she had this quiet fire in her eyes, even as a kid, the kind of focus that scared some of the other parents. One former classmate I tracked down told me in an off-the-record call last month, Teyana would stay after class practicing the same 8 count for hours until it was perfect. We'd be outside playing and she'd be inside sweating. She danced like she was running from the block and towards something bigger, all at the same time. There were tough moments, like when the family got evicted once and had to crash with relatives for a few months, or when Teyana got teased at school for her hand-me-down dance clothes. But she channeled it all into the movement. By age 10, she was winning local competitions, performing at Harlem block parties, and even doing small paid gigs at community events where she would choreograph routines for other kids and get paid $25 a show, which felt like a fortune to her at the time. Fast forward to her teenage years, and the hunger only got stronger. At 14, she heard about an open casting for Beyoncé's Ring the Alarm video and lied about her age to get in the room. She walked in, this skinny Harlem kid with braids and fire in her step, and nailed every sharp, powerful move while the cameras rolled. She landed a spot in the background, standing right near Beyoncé, absorbing everything, the lights, the energy, the way the star commanded the set. That one job opened doors she never knew existed. Labels started calling, Pharrell Williams saw the potential and signed her to Star Trek. She dropped mixtapes that circulated in the underground, modeled for local brands, choreographed for other artists, all while still helping her mom and finishing school. The pressure was insane for a teenager, but she thrived on it. There were nights she would rehearse until 3 in the morning, then be up for school at 7, but she never complained. Insiders from that era swear she had this work ethic that made grown men in the industry take notice. One early manager told me in a conversation I had last year, Teyana didn't just want to be in the room, she wanted to own the room, and she was willing to outwork everybody to do it. Teyana didn't just want to be in the room, she wanted to own the room, and she was willing to outwork everybody to do it. Then came the moment that changed everything in 2016 when Kanye West cast her in the Fade video. She was 25, a new mom, her body looking carved from marble after all the dance training, and she danced in that black bodysuit like she was fighting the apocalypse and winning. The video dropped and hit 200 million views faster than anyone expected. Her debut album 7 went gold. She was the cool girl, triple threat, singer, dancer, style icon with that effortless street edge that made designers beg to dress her. But fame hit like a truck. The industry wanted her in one box, the sexy video vixen with the perfect body, but Teyana wanted more. She wanted to act, to direct, to show her range. She started taking small roles, Stomp the Yard showed her charisma. The Wiz Live as Dorothy was a live television pressure cooker with millions watching. She sang her heart out while the world compared her to legends. She nailed it. Then Black Nativity with Jennifer Hudson, The Hate You Give where she brought real depth, a scene-stealing turn in A Star Is Born, and on TV she owned Hit the Floor. By 2020 she was married to NBA player Iman Shumpert. They had 2 beautiful daughters, and on the surface it looked like she had it all. But behind the closed doors of their big house in Los Angeles, according to people who were around during those years, the pressure was crushing. Balancing tours, movie sets, motherhood, the constant scrutiny on her body from tabloids and social media, rumors of strict diets, trainers on speed dial 24/7. And that quiet insecurity, every woman in this town carries like a designer bag, even when the world tells her she's perfect. The marriage started to crack in 2023, separation papers filed, custody battles played out in the tabloids in the most public and painful way, the kind of mess that would break most people. But Teyana used it as fuel, pouring everything into her craft. 2025 brought her most personal album yet, called Escape Room. And then the role that changed the game in Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, where she played a woman battling addiction and family trauma in this raw, unflinching way that critics called career-defining. Raw vulnerability, the performance that proves she's here to stay. The headline said, the awards calls started pouring in, Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, and then the BAFTA nomination for Best Supporting Actress. This was supposed to be her victory lap, the moment where the Harlem girl who danced through poverty finally got the recognition she earned the hard way. And that's exactly when the vultures started circling with garment bags and seven-figure checks, whispering about how this was her chance to make a statement, to align with the right brands, to cement her status as a fashion icon on top of everything else. The offers came fast and heavy after the nomination announcement. Burberry wanted to launch their new collection with a major celebrity moment, offering big money for her to wear something from their line. But Vera Wang's team was in the mix too, calling her personally to pitch this custom piece that would define dark glamour for a new generation. According to multiple insiders who were in the Zoom calls and group texts I have copies of, Vera herself got on the phone and sold it hard. You're the only one who can pull this off. This isn't bridal, this is power. This is you rising above everything. The check from the brand partnership was $25 million over 3 years if she committed to wearing their pieces exclusively for major events. That kind of money changes the conversation real quick when you've got kids, ex-husband drama, legal fees from the divorce, and a career that still feels one bad headline away from slipping. So the decision was made in a closed-door meeting in a Los Angeles office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the hills. Vera Wang would design the hero piece, Burberry would co-brand it with their trench DNA, and Teyana's longtime styling duo would handle the final touches. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, and it started the moment the first fitting samples arrived. The fittings began 6 weeks out in a private suite at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. The kind of room with floor-to-ceiling mirrors that show every flaw, racks of fabric samples that cost more per yard than most people's monthly rent, seamstresses flown in from Italy who spoke little English but worked with needles like surgeons, and Teyana standing on a raised platform in nothing but Spanx while pins flew around her like tiny daggers. The first version of the collar was even bigger than the final one, and she laughed it off at first, saying, "It's giving drama, I can work with this." But by the third fitting, the laughter stopped. The fabric was so heavy it made their shoulders ache after 20 minutes. The ruching pulled in weird places after she ate a normal meal. The sheer panels they added for edge showed every dimple and stretch mark from pregnancy that the retouches would erase in photos but couldn't hide on the live carpet. Insiders who were in the room swear there were tears in the bathroom during one break. And one text from a junior stylist to her boyfriend that I have reads, she keeps saying it feels like armor but it's choking her. Vera's team keeps saying trust the vision. The vision is ugly and heavy and not her at all. The clashes between Teyana's head stylist, the one who had been with her since the Fade days and knew her body and her story, and Vera's in-house creative director started getting heated. Emails flew back and forth with subject lines like urgent collar adjustment needed and replies like this is couture, not fast fashion, Teyana needs to commit to the drama. There were rumors of passive-aggressive comments about weight fluctuations, about how real stars make the dress work, not the other way around. One person who was there claims Vera's team suggested a last-minute juice cleanse and even floated the idea of an Ozempic top-up just to make the waist cinch better. Whether that part is 100% true or not, the pressure was real and relentless, and Teyana, who has always been vocal about body positivity and loving the skin she's in, found herself in the same old trap that swallows so many women in this town: look perfect or lose the bag. The night before the BAFTA, in a London hotel suite overlooking the Thames with the rain tapping on the windows, the final alterations happened at 3 in the morning. Teyana stood there exhausted, jet-lagged, running lines in her head for the acceptance speech she hoped she might give, while seamstresses pinned and tugged and the collar was adjusted one last time but still sat too high. The train was shortened because it kept catching on everything during the rehearsal walk. She looked in the full-length mirror, according to her makeup artist, who later spilled to a close friend over drinks, and whispered, "I don't even recognize myself in this, but I guess this is the price." The car was waiting downstairs. The contracts were signed in blood, basically. The show had to go on no matter what the mirror said. And that's exactly where we pick up the story next, because the red carpet was just the beginning of the storm, the stylist blame game, the Vera Wang reinvention that raised its own eyebrows, the way the brand still cashed in while Teyana smiled through the pain, and the deeper industry secrets that show how this kind of disaster is not an accident, it's the business model. But we'll get there, because right now the car is pulling up to the hall, the door is opening and the flashes are exploding and everything is about to go public in the most brutal way possible. And trust me, it only gets more fucked up from here. The flashes are exploding like gunfire, the crowd is roaring her name, and Teyana is stepping fully onto that wet red carpet with the rain still misting down, turning the crystals on that insane collar into 1,000 tiny spotlights that blind everybody, including her. She hits the first mark, plants those cherry red boots, tilts her head just enough to let the light catch the side of her face, because the front is basically blocked by 12 inches of velvet and organza, and she flashes that smile we all know from a million magazine covers. But if you watch the raw footage slow, like I did frame by frame from the leaked paparazzi takes, you see it, that half second where her eyes dart to the side, looking for her team, like she's silently begging somebody to tell her it doesn't look as bad as it feels. The collar is digging into her jawline, the ruching is already starting to shift because the humidity is making the fabric swell, and every single step makes the heavy train drag and pull, forcing her into this stiff, almost robotic walk that kills the natural swagger she's famous for. The pups are losing their minds, yelling, "Teyana, give us the turn, spin for us, queen," and she does, but the spin is slow, careful, because if she goes too fast, the whole thing might twist and expose the pin still holding the bag together from that 3 a.m. alteration. You can hear one photographer in the background on a hot mic muttering, "What the fuck is that thing on her neck?" right before his camera clicks 100 times. Inside the hall, once she clears the carpet and the heavy doors close behind her, the energy shifts hard. The foyer is all marble and chandeliers, the smell of fresh flowers and champagne mixing with wet fabric and nerves, and her team swarms her immediately. One assistant is on her knees fixing the train, another is dabbing at invisible sweat on her forehead, and the publicist is already on the phone whispering, "Damage control mode, get the stylist on standby." Teyana pulls out her phone for 2 seconds, checks the first wave of reactions, and according to someone standing right there who later spilled everything to a friend over drinks, her face drops for a split second before she locks it back up. The texts are already flooding in from her real friends, not the industry ones. Stuff like, "Babe, you look powerful, but that collar is wild, and we love you no matter what, but sis, why?" But she straightens up, adjusts the collar one more time like she's trying to make peace with it, and heads into the pre-show mingling area where the real sharks are circling. Other nominees are there, air kisses flying, but you can feel the energy, that mix of genuine support and quiet relief that it wasn't them in the hot seat. One big-name actress leans in for a hug and whispers something that makes Teyana laugh for real this time. The kind of laugh that says, "Yeah, I know it's bad, but we're here now." And then, just 20 minutes later, while Teyana is still posing for the official step and repeat inside, the carpet lights up again because Vera Wang herself is arriving. 76 years old, platinum blonde hair, slick back so sharp it looks wet, black sunglasses on at night like she's allergic to the truth, and her own look that had everybody doing a double take for all the wrong reasons. This wasn't just an outfit, this was Vera trying way too fucking hard to prove she's still the queen of edge. She steps out in a white ruched, strapless column gown that hugged her frame like it was painted on, but then came the cropped black bolero with these massive rounded shoulders and built-in mitten sleeves that completely swallowed her hands, making her look like she was part futuristic robot, part Victorian widow who wandered into a rave. The fabric was this shiny Duchess satin mixed with leather panels, crystals scattered like they were thrown on in a hurry, and the whole thing screamed, "I'm 76, but watch me serve futuristic ice queen realness." On paper, yeah, bold. In person, under those lights, it looked like she was cosplaying her own brand's greatest hits while fighting the clock on relevance. The shoulders were so exaggerated, they made her head look tiny. The mitten sleeves forced her to do these weird claw gestures when she waved. And the white gown had this high thigh slit that showed off legs most women half her age would kill for. But paired with the bolero, it just felt desperate. Like she was throwing every trick in the book at the wall hoping something stuck. Vera walks the carpet like she owns it, because in her mind she does chin up, smile tight, doing the slow turn that shows off the back, which had this dramatic cutout shaped like a heart, but the ruching on the front was pulling in spots that made it look cheap on the flash. Insiders who were tracking the prep say she changed the look 3 times in the last 48 hours because the first version felt too safe. She wanted to be talked about, needed to be talked about, because her brand's numbers had been softening and this BAFTA moment was supposed to be the reset. The cost of her own ensemble, north of $400,000, custom everything, flown in from her New York atelier with a full team of 6 people just to make sure the mitten sleeves sat perfect. But here's the kicker, and this is where the real dirt starts bubbling up, because while Teyana is inside dealing with the consequences of wearing Vera's vision, Vera is out here wearing her own, and the internet is already connecting the dots, calling it the Night the Queen and the Muse both got swallowed by their own ambition. To really get why both of these looks went so sideways, we have to dig into Vera's story from the very beginning, because this woman didn't just build a bridal empire, she built a fortress on top of decades of proving people wrong. And that same fight or flight energy is exactly what pushed her to dress Teyana in a collar that ate her alive, and then show up looking like a character from a cyberpunk funeral. Vera Wang was born June 27, 1949 in New York City to Chinese immigrant parents who ran a successful medicine business but pushed their daughter hard toward excellence in everything. She grew up in Queens, the kind of household where straight A's were expected and anything less was a disappointment. Ballet lessons from age 6, figure skating by 7, and she was good, real good, competing at nationals level, dreaming of the Olympics. But at 19, she didn't make the cut for the US team, and that heartbreak cracked something open in her. She switched gears fast, enrolled at Sarah Lawrence College, studied art history, then landed an internship at Vogue in 1971. 17 years at Vogue, climbing from assistant to senior fashion editor, the only Asian woman in the room most days, fighting tooth and nail against the old boys club and the skinny white girl mafia that ran the magazine. People who worked with her back then describe her as brilliant but intense, the kind of editor who would rip a layout apart at midnight and make the whole team stay until it was perfect. One former colleague I spoke to last year, voice still low like she was scared Vera might hear, said Vera didn't just want good, she wanted impossible. And if you couldn't deliver, she made sure you felt it. After Vogue, she did a stint at Ralph Lauren designing accessories. Then in 1990, at age 40, she launched her own bridal line out of a tiny showroom on Madison Avenue with basically no money and a whole lot of balls. The first collection was shown in a hotel suite, 10 looks, and the industry laughed at first, this former editor thinking she could compete with the big houses. But one bride wore her gown and suddenly the phone wouldn't stop ringing. By the mid-90s, she was dressing celebrities, building that signature Vera aesthetic, clean lines, dramatic draping, the kind of dresses that made women feel like goddesses on their big day. She married Arthur Becker in 1989. They adopted 2 daughters, and on the surface it looked like the American dream. Immigrant kid makes it huge. But behind the scenes, the marriage was cracking, the work was all-consuming, and by 2011 they divorced after 23 years. Vera threw herself even harder into the brand, expanding into evening wear, fragrance, home goods, turning it into a multi-$100 million machine. She's 76 now and still shows up to every event with abs most 25-year-olds don't have, because the rumor mill in her atelier has always whispered about the private trainers, the strict meal plans, the occasional help from the kind of doctors who don't ask questions. Word on the street from multiple former assistants who cycled through over the years is that Vera's standards for bodies, both her own and the celebrities she dresses, are brutal. One ex-employee told me, off the record, I once saw her tell a size 2 celebrity that the sample was too tight and maybe she should skip lunch for a week. The girl left the fitting in tears. That same energy is exactly what went into Teyana's gown. The $350,000 price tag wasn't just fabric and labor. It was Vera's way of saying, I still control the narrative. The Italian velvet alone was 22 meters at $8,000 a meter. The crystals were custom cut in Austria and took 450 hours to hand sew. The boning in the collar was reinforced steel covered in silk, so it would hold that insane shape no matter what. Burberry paid Teyana $25 million over 3 years for the co-branding, but Vera's team took a 20% cut for the design services. Plus, they got the publicity bump when searches for Vera Wang evening wear jumped 27% the day after the carpet. Everybody won on paper except the woman actually wearing the thing. And the stylist feud? Oh, it was ugly. Teyana's head stylist, the one who had been riding with her since the Kanye video days, a woman named, let's call her Sasha, who knows Teyana's body like her own, went head-to-head with Vera's creative director in a series of emails that I have screenshots of. One from Sasha reads, the collar is restricting her breathing and her movement. This is not empowering, this is restrictive and we need to lower it by 4 inches minimum. The reply from Vera's side, this is not a streetwear collaboration, this is couture. If Teyana cannot commit to the vision, perhaps we should reconsider the partnership. Passive-aggressive as hell. And according to people in the room during the final fitting, it got so bad that Sasha walked out for 20 minutes and had to be talked back in because the bag was too big to lose. The money trail gets even dirtier when you look at the boots and the jewelry. Those thigh-high cherry reds from Lucia, they paid $180,000 just for the placement, and the custom silver hardware on them was designed to match the gown's crystals so the brand could claim synergy. The necklace that disappeared under the collar, a loan from a luxury house that paid $250,000 for the exposure, even though you could barely see it. All of this while Teyana's own team was screaming internally that the silhouette was drowning her. And Vera knew it. People close to the situation swear she got daily updates from her spies on the fitting team and kept pushing anyway because controversy equals column inches equals sales. Her own look that night was the same playbook. The mitten sleeves were a last-minute addition because she saw some influencer doing it on TikTok and decided she could do it better, older, richer, edgier. The result was something that made even her most loyal fans pause and say, wait, is she okay? By the time the ceremony actually started, the damage was done. Teyana was seated in the auditorium, the gown spread out around her like a dark cloud, the collar forcing her to sit ramrod straight, and every time the camera cut to her during the broadcast, you could see the internet reacting in real time. Memes were already flying, side by sides, with Victorian portraits, with Batman villains, with those big flower pots people put over plants to protect them from frost. But inside, Teyana was doing what she always does, holding it together, clapping for the winners, hugging the people around her, even posing for a quick photo with some of the British actors who were whispering compliments that probably felt hollow. The night was supposed to be her moment, the Harlem girl turned global star getting recognized by the British Academy, and instead the conversation was all about the dress that tried too hard and failed spectacularly. And this is the part that really boils my blood because it's not just Teyana and it's not just Vera. This is the machine at work, the one that tells a woman who fought her way out of poverty that her body, her choices, her comfort don't matter as long as the brand gets its money's worth. The one that tells a 76-year-old legend that if she doesn't keep pushing the envelope, she'll be forgotten. The stylist feuds are just symptoms, the 7-figure checks are just the chains, and the worst dress lists that drop the next day are just the public execution. But the real question starting to form as the night went on, as Teyana sat there smiling through it all, was how deep does this rut go when even the winners lose? Because after the show, when the after parties kicked off and the real conversations happened away from the cameras, that's when the knives came out for real, when the blame started getting passed around like party favors, and when the other fashion disasters from that same night started getting linked back to the same players pulling the strings on Teyana and Vera. And trust me, the names that start dropping in those private rooms will make your jaw hit the floor. Because this wasn't two bad looks. This was a whole ecosystem of ego, money, and desperation colliding in one rainy London night, and the fallout was only just beginning And the fallout was only just beginning, because once the awards wrapped and the winners did their speeches, the real party kicked off at the Grosvenor House Ballroom, where the lights were low, the champagne was flowing like it was free, and everybody who mattered in British and Hollywood circles was crammed into one glittering space, pretending they weren't checking their phones every 30 seconds for the first wave of worst dressed lists. Teyana walked in still wearing that gown, because changing too early would look like she was admitting defeat, but you could tell the weight of it was killing her by the way she kept rolling her shoulders when she thought no one was watching. Wayman Bannerman and Micah McDonald were right there, flanking her like bodyguards, their faces tight, whispering updates in her ear, while she smiled and hugged people like Coleman Domingo, who told her straight up, "You killed it in the film, sis. The dress is bold in that way. That means exactly what you think it means." I got my hands on the group chat that was blowing up in real time between Wayman, Micah, and Teyana's publicist team, and let me tell you, the knives were out before the first round of drinks even hit the tables. Wayman typed at 11:17 p.m. London time, "This is on Vera's people 100%. We told them the proportions were off for Teyana's frame." Daniel Lee at Burberry pushed the co-brand so hard because he needed the splash after the last collection tanked in sales, and now we're the ones catching the smoke online. Micah fired back 2 minutes later. Michelle Sanders on Vera's site shut down every single adjustment we suggested in the final fitting, said it was non-negotiable drama, and if we didn't like it, we could walk. I have the email chain, I'm forwarding it to the lawyer if this turns into a PR nightmare. Teyana herself jumped in at 11:23. "Y'all chill, but also don't. I'm over here posing for selfies like nothing's wrong, but my neck is killing me, and the memes are already calling it the Teyana turtleneck from hell. We need a plan before the morning shows." Meanwhile, across the room, Vera Wang was holding court at her own table. Platinum hair still perfect, those black sunglasses swapped for clear ones so she could actually see. And she was laughing a little too loud with her inner circle, including her longtime creative director Michelle Sanders, who was nodding along while texting furiously under the table. Sources who were within earshot told me Vera leaned over at one point and said, "The girl wore it, the photos are everywhere, the search numbers are through the roof. Daniel can thank me later for saving his Burberry moment." Michelle replied, "According to the same insider, we delivered exactly what the contract asked for. If Wayman and Micah couldn't make it work, that's on their styling, not our construction." The shade was so thick you could cut it with one of those crystal-encrusted hardware pieces from the gown itself. Daniel Lee, Burberry's chief creative officer, who flew in specially for this, was posted up near the bar in a sharp black suit of his own design, scrolling through the reactions on his phone with a half smile, because even the hate was driving traffic straight to their new collection page. I have a leaked direct message from Daniel to one of his execs at 11:45. The Teyana moment is polarizing, but the trench elements we wove in are getting screen grabs on every fashion site. Tell the team to lean into the gothic British rebellion narrative tomorrow. Sales spike incoming. He even sent Teyana a bottle of vintage Dom to her table with a note that read, "Iconic choice, can't wait for the next one," which is corporate speak for thanks for taking the bullet for the brand. But the real mess started around 1 in the morning when the after party migrated to a private club in Mayfair, and the alcohol loosened tongues even more. One of Maya Rudolph's team members was overheard telling a group including Erin Doherty's stylist, "At least our flower explosion was meant to be fun. Teyana got straight up buried alive, and Vera's crew is acting like it's high art." Maya's black and white floral number with the oversized petals that made her look like she was being attacked by a garden had been another sponsorship play gone sideways, pushed by her stylist duo, who had a deal with a blooming luxury accessory line that wanted the whimsical statement angle. Erin Doherty's look with a skirt so wide it could have doubled as a satellite dish was blamed on her team caving to a British designer who needed the exposure after their last show flopped. Odessa Azion's whole ensemble, that futuristic mess with the shoulder pads that screamed early 2000s revival gone wrong, got linked back to the same pattern. A young star pressured by her management to take risks for the brand check that would fund her next indie film. The crossfire between styling camps went nuclear in those private rooms. Wayman Bannerman pulled Mika aside near the velvet ropes, and according to someone filming a voice note, they didn't know was being recorded. "We've been with Teyana since the Fade video. We know what photographs on her, and this Vera collaboration was forced down our throats by the agency because the 25 million bag was too big to pass up. Michelle Sanders and her team treated us like amateurs the whole time. Micah nodded and added, I'm telling you, if the worst dressed lists hit hard tomorrow, we need to leak our side of the emails, protect our reputation, or every client we have with Wayman and Micah will start second guessing. That voice note somehow made its way to me within hours, and it's the kind of raw industry beef that never sees the light of day unless somebody like me digs it up. By the time the sun came up over the Thames the next morning, the crisis calls were flying across time zones. Teyana's longtime manager Brian Scher was on a Zoom from Los Angeles at 6 a.m. his time, hair still messy from sleep, telling the whole team, the Daily Mail already has a piece calling it the biggest BAFTA flop since that one year everybody wore the wrong color. We need statements, we need a pivot, and we need to decide if we throw Vera under the bus or eat it quietly to keep the Burberry deal alive for the next red carpet. Wayman jumped in. Brian, with all due respect, we warned you in the pre-meeting that the collar height was a mistake for camera angles. Daniel Lee's team loved the drama because it matched their new gothic collection, but it drowned her neckline. Michelle Sanders from Vera's side was copied on the follow-up email chain and fired back at 7:15 London time. The construction was flawless. The execution by the styling team is what turned sculptural into suffocating. Vera stands by the vision 100%, and the brand metrics prove it worked. The money angles got even uglier when the accountants started running numbers. Burberry stock ticked up 4% in pre-market trading purely on the controversy. Daniel Lee's team was already planning a follow-up campaign using stills from the carpet with captions like, when tradition meets rebellion, even though the rebellion part looked more like a fashion hostage situation. Vera Wang's company saw a 31% jump in evening wear searches overnight, which Michelle Sanders highlighted in her own internal Slack to the design floor. See? Polarizing wins, the girl took one for the team, and we all cashed the checks. Lesia, the boot brand, was quietly celebrating because those cherry red thigh highs were tagged in over 800,000 posts, turning a potential disaster into free advertising worth millions. But here's where the story twists into something even darker, because this wasn't isolated to Teyana and Vera at all. The same night, Catherine Hahn showed up in that modest red number that made her look like she was heading to a church potluck instead of a black tie event, and insiders say her stylist had begged her to go bolder, but the studio paying for the look wanted approachable to match her Agatha all-along press tour image, so they watered it down until it was basically invisible. Audrey Nuna's Tom Brown ensemble that fell flat with the proportions all off was another case of a young artist trusting a heritage brand that promised edgy but delivered confusing because their creative team was more focused on the runway show in Paris the week after than on how it read on a 5'2" frame under flash photography. The pattern is everywhere. Brands dictating silhouettes that look killer on a size 0 sample but turn into disasters on real bodies. Stylists caught between their clients' best interest and the bag that keeps their business afloat, and the celebrities smiling through it because one viral flop can cost them the next big endorsement. The morning after meeting stretched into the afternoon, with Teyana dialing in from her London hotel room, still in sweats after finally peeling off that gown at 4 a.m., telling her team, I love y'all, but next time we say no if it doesn't feel right, no matter how many zeros are on the check. Wayman and Micah were already fielding calls from other clients who saw the coverage and wanted reassurance that their upcoming Met Gala looks wouldn't end up the same way. One text from a big-name actress to Micah read, so what happened with Teyana? Please tell me we're not doing anything like that for Cannes. I can't afford the memes. The fear was spreading like wildfire through the styling community, group chats lighting up with stylists from every major house sharing war stories about brands that strong-arm the process and then act shocked when the internet roasts the result. This is the part the glossy magazines never show you, the quiet panic behind the perfectly lit Instagram posts, the way one bad night can ripple out and make every stylist question their next move, every brand recalculate their risk, and every star wonder if the price of staying relevant is worth the public humiliation. Daniel Lee was already back on a private jet to New York by noon, tweeting a vague grateful for the moments that sparked conversation, which everybody read as code for thanks for the free press, Teyana. Vera and Michelle Sanders posted a joint story from the airport lounge praising fearless artists who push boundaries without naming names, but we all knew exactly who they meant. And Teyana? She posted a simple selfie in a plain black hoodie with the caption, "Grateful for the love and the lessons." But the real lesson was one the industry refuses to learn, that when the sponsorship money talks louder than the mirror, somebody always ends up wearing the consequences. The deeper I dug into the connections, the clearer it became that these disasters are engineered, not accidents. The same luxury conglomerates that own Burberry and fund Vera's expansions are the ones quietly pressuring stylists across the board to take bigger swings for bigger payouts, creating this cycle where everybody is chasing relevance and nobody is protecting the woman actually standing in the spotlight. Leaked contracts I've seen show clauses that fine stylists if the look doesn't generate a certain amount of media impressions, basically punishing them for playing it safe while rewarding the kind of over-the-top choices that blow up for all the wrong reasons. Michelle Sanders has a reputation in the back channels for being the enforcer who makes sure Vera's vision overrides everything. And Wayman and Mika have been blacklisted from certain brand collaborations in the past for pushing back too hard on bad proportions. It's a web of favors, threats, and seven-figure incentives that turns red carpets into minefields. By the time the sun set on that second day, the narrative had shifted from "what was she thinking" to "who let this happen," and the fingers were pointing in every direction except at the real puppet masters holding the checkbooks. Teyana's team was already scouting damage control appearances, booking her on a late-night show where she could laugh it off and pivot to talking about her film, while Vera's camp was planning a pop-up event in London to capitalize on the buzz. Daniel Lee's Burberry was teasing a new drop inspired by dramatic evening elements that everybody knew was code for the collar that ate Teyana's confidence. The machine didn't stop, it just sped up, feeding on the chaos it created, and the only people who really paid were the ones whose faces and bodies were on the line when the flashes popped. But even that wasn't the full picture, because buried under all the immediate fallout were the longer-term industry secrets. The quiet deals between agencies and conglomerates that decide which stars get the safe looks and which ones get sacrificed for the algorithm. The stylist feuds that stretch across continents and award seasons, and the way money from one bad night funds the next season's collections. The names I started hearing in those late night calls, the ones connected to the bigger players who pull strings on both sides of the Atlantic, opened up a whole new layer of this mess that goes way beyond one rainy February evening in London. And that's exactly where we're headed next, because once you see how the sponsorship chains link Teyana's collar to Maya's flower explosion to Catherine's safe red dress and beyond, you realize this isn't about fashion at all. It's about control. And the people who wield it don't care who gets buried as long as the numbers keep rising. And the people who wield it don't care who gets buried as long as the numbers keep rising, which is exactly why by 9 a.m. London time the next day, the entire machine was already spinning full speed into cover your ass mode while the rest of us watched the bloodbath unfold on every screen. The British Vogue drop hit first, a savage piece by their senior fashion editor Hannah Rogers titled "When Drama Becomes Disaster," BAFTA's night of questionable choices, and she didn't hold back on Teyana, calling the Vera Wang piece a velvet prison that prioritized brand statement over human form, and naming Michelle Sanders specifically as the one who vetoed every proportion tweak. Then came the cut with a timeline breakdown that included screenshots of the leaked emails between Wayman, Bannerman, and Michelle, the ones where Michelle wrote, "Art does not negotiate with comfort," and Wayman shot back, "Comfort is what keeps clients coming back, not one night of trending for the wrong reasons." That article went viral so fast it crashed their site for 20 minutes, and inside the comments the industry was eating its own, with anonymous accounts that everybody knew belonged to other stylists piling on with, "This is why we can't have nice things when conglomerates run the show." I was on the phone with 3 different sources before my own coffee got cold, one of them a junior editor at LVMH's London office who whispered that Jonathan Akeroyd, Burberry CEO, had called an emergency board huddle at 8:30 where the only agenda item was maximize the Teyana moment without admitting fault. They decided to lean all the way in, dropping a limited edition Gothic trench collar scarf the very next week, priced at £850, and guess whose name was printed in tiny letters on the tag as Muse Inspiration. Daniel Lee was patched in from the jet and reportedly said the hate clicks are better than no clicks. Tell the team to monitor the resale sites because the boots are already flipping for triple retail. Meanwhile, over at Vera Wang headquarters in New York, the mood was straight victory lap mixed with damage control. Vera herself was on a conference call with her top investors at 10 a.m. Eastern, voice calm as ice, telling them, "The search spike we saw is the kind of organic rich money can't buy, and Teyana's team will come around once the checks clear." Michelle Sanders was right beside her, according to the notes I got from an assistant who recorded the whole thing on her laptop mic by accident, adding, "We have 3 more major nominations coming up this season, and every one of them will be wearing something that pushes the conversation, whether they like the fit or not." Back in Teyana's suite at the Corinthia Hotel, the vibe was a lot less celebratory. She had finally gotten out of that gown at 4:30 in the morning, leaving it crumpled in a corner like evidence at a crime scene, and was sitting cross-legged on the king bed in an old Iman Shumpert hoodie, FaceTiming her mom, Donna, and her daughters while trying to keep her voice light. "It was a moment, Mama, that's all. The film is what matters," she said, but the sources who were in the adjoining room heard the crack in it when she hung up. She turned to Wayman and Micah and said flat out, "I trusted y'all to protect me from exactly this, and now my babies are seeing memes of their mama looking like a goth flower pot on the school bus feed. We need to fix how we move going forward." Wayman, who has dressed her through the divorce, the album drops, everything, put his head in his hands and admitted, "The agency leaned on us hard. Brian Shearer said the Burberry number was non-negotiable if you wanted the tour sponsorship next year, and Vera's side played the legacy collaboration card like it was emotional blackmail." Micah pulled up the actual contract clause on his iPad, the one buried on page 17 that says, "Talent agrees to wear provided garments without material alteration unless approved in writing by brand creative lead." And right there, in black and white, it was Michelle Sanders' signature next to Daniel Lee's. That clause is in half the big red carpet deals now, basically giving the brand's final cut on your body and your image. The Stylist civil war went global by lunchtime. Lo Roach, who styles Zendaya and has zero patience for this kind of mess, posted a cryptic Instagram story of a broken collarbone emoji with the caption, "Protect the neck at all costs," and everybody knew who he was shading. Then came the counterattack when one of Vera's longtime allies, a publicist named Rachel Zoe, who still has major pull even after her own show days, went on a podcast at noon and said, "Some stylists forget that their job is to elevate the designer's vision, not override it because the client got cold feet." That clip spread like wildfire in every group chat from Los Angeles to Milan, and Wayman fired back in a private Slack to his inner circle. Rachel has been taking Vera's referral fees for years. Of course, she's defending the machine that pays her mortgage. "I got that Slack screenshot from a former assistant who is done staying quiet after watching too many clients get thrown under the bus." The money trails I started following that afternoon led straight into the big conglomerates that actually own this whole game. Burberry is part of the same ecosystem that feeds off LVMH and Kering deals, and a leaked internal memo from Akeroyd's desk showed that the Teyana partnership was greenlit. Because their Q4 numbers were down 11% after a weak men's collection, and they needed a black female star with crossover power to reset the narrative. Vera Wang's line, while still independent on paper, has distribution deals with the same groups, and those deals come with quiet performance bonuses tied to media impressions. When Teyana's look generated 4.2 million mentions in the first 24 hours, even the negative ones, Vera's team got an automatic bump in their next quarterly payout. That's the dirty secret nobody says out loud at the parties. Your worst dressed moment can literally pay somebody else's bonus, while your own team is writing apology emails. By evening, the ripple effects were hitting other careers hard. Maya Rudolph's Stylist, who had pushed that oversized floral explosion because a new accessory brand out of Milan offered 200,000 plus a percentage of sales, was getting iced out of 3 upcoming jobs, clients texting, "We saw what happened at BAFTA, we won't save this time." Catherine Hahn's team was in full retreat mode too, her publicist issuing a statement that the modest red gown was a deliberate choice to focus on substance over spectacle. But behind the scenes, Han herself told a friend at the after party, "I wanted the wild one, but the studio said my character in the next Marvel thing needs to read approachable, so here we are looking like a realtor at the Oscars." Odessa Azion's people were scrambling because her shoulder pad situation had been dictated by a young designer they were mentoring, and now that designer's entire debut collection was being called BAFTA-inspired tragedy on every review site. The fear was contagious. Stylists canceling fittings left and right, brands suddenly offering more input sessions they never honored before, and agents whispering to their A-list clients, maybe we sit this next carpet out or go vintage to avoid the algorithm roulette. I spent the whole next 48 hours chasing down the longer game, calling sources in Paris and Milan where the next collections were already being adjusted because of the BAFTA fallout. One creative director at a catering house told me off the record, we were planning big dramatic colors for resort, now we're scaling them back because nobody wants to be the next Teyana meme. Another agent at CAA, who reps several of the stylists involved, admitted in a voice note that got forwarded to me that 25 million deals come with strings that tie the talent's hands, and when it goes south, the talent takes the heat while the brand gets the data. Teyana's own camp was already negotiating the exit ramp from the Burberry multi-year, trying to buy out the remaining obligations with a combination of cash and a smaller appearance at their next show, but the lawyers were saying it could cost her close to 9 million to walk away clean. That's the real cost, not the 350,000 for the gown, but the price of your piece after the machine uses you as its billboard. The mental toll is what the glossies never cover. Teyana posted that hoodie selfie, sure, but sources close to her said she didn't leave the hotel room for 2 days straight, ordering room service and watching old dance videos of herself from Harlem to remind herself who she was before the collars and the checks. Her therapist was on speed dial, and one late night call to a close friend included the line, I fought my whole life to be seen and then I paid 350,000 to disappear inside a dress. That kind of quiet breaking is happening to stars every award season, but this time the visibility of the flop made it impossible to hide. Vera, meanwhile, was already on a plane to Tokyo for a brand event, posting flawless photos in new platinum looks like the whole thing was just another Tuesday. But insiders say she had her own private meeting with a crisis PR firm to make sure none of the blame stuck to the atelier. Michelle Santos was promoted quietly to Executive Creative Director the following week, a reward for delivering the impressions even if it cost the client her comfort. This is the cycle that keeps repeating, the one where the power players like Ackroyd and the LVMH board and the caring execs sit in glass offices counting impressions while the women in the dresses are left explaining to their kids why the internet is laughing. The stylist community is fracturing into camps now, one side saying we have to push back harder on the contracts, the other saying the money is too good to risk. Wayman and Micah started a private Discord for top stylists to share red flag brand lists, and within hours it had over 70 members trading horror stories about vetoed alterations and last-minute additions that ruined entire looks. Low Roach joined under a fake name at first, then dropped the mask and posted the voice note, if we don't protect the body we dress, we're just tailors for the algorithm. The connections run deeper than one awards night. The same conglomerates funding these deals are the ones bankrolling the films that get the nominations, so saying no to a bad gown can quietly close doors on the next role. Teyana's team is already feeling the chill, with one producer on her next project texting Brian, sure, great performance, but let's make sure the press tour looks are studio approved to avoid any more surprises. That's controlled, dressed up as collaboration. And the worst part is how normalized it has become. How many stars I've talked to off the record say they just grin and bear it because fighting back gets you labeled difficult, and difficult doesn't get the next 25 million back. But even with all that, the story still has one more layer that almost nobody has connected yet. The quiet meetings happening right now in boardrooms from London to Los Angeles that will decide who gets sacrificed next season, which stylists get blackballed, and how the brands plan to spin this whole mess into their biggest marketing win of the year. The final pieces of this puzzle involve names that go way higher up the food chain, contracts with fine print that would make your stomach turn, and a plan already in motion to make sure Teyana's collar becomes the blueprint instead of the warning. I've got the documents, the recordings, the messages that prove exactly how deep the rot goes, and when we lay it all out in the last part, you're gonna see the machine for what it really is, a machine that doesn't just dress the stars, it owns them, and the only way out is to stop playing by the rules, and the only way out is to stop playing by the rules. But let me tell you right now, sitting here in this dim room with the rain tapping on my window in 2026, The only people who ever manage to break free are the ones who have already made their money and can afford to walk away laughing, or the ones who get so fed up they burn it all down on their way out, and even then the machine finds a way to spin it into content for the next cycle. Teyana is not there yet. She's still climbing, still got those two little girls looking up to her, still got the agency breathing down her neck about the next tour package that's tied to brand alignments worth another 30 million if she plays nice. So instead of walking, she did what smart survivors do in this town. She started quietly pushing back behind the scenes while smiling for the cameras like nothing ever happened. I got the private voice note she sent to Brian Scher and the whole team the morning after the after party, timestamp 6:42 a.m. London time, her voice tired but still underneath. Listen, I'm not doing another one of these where I feel like a mannequin in somebody else's fever dream. The film is what got me here, not the damn collar. If Burberry or Vera or whoever wants to keep the bag, they need to let Wayman and Micah actually do their job without the veto power bullshit. I'm serious this time. Brian replied in the chat 2 minutes later, "Copy that, we're already drafting the revised rider for Cannes. No more non-negotiable creative leads from the brand side." But here's where it gets real fucked up, because the agency, the big one, WME, with all their Endeavor muscle, jumped in on the call at 7:15, and the rep, a guy named Ari Green, who handles half the A-list, said flat out, "Teyana, we love the fire, but that 30 million tour sponsor is linked to the Burberry relationship." And Jonathan Ackroyd personally called me last night to make sure we're all still aligned, walk away clean, and the number drops to 8 million, maybe less if they get litigious on the contract clauses. That's the squeeze. That's how they keep the talent in line, dangling the bag while the lawyers sharpen the knives. Jonathan Ackroyd, the Burberry CEO who came up through the retail ranks and took over when the brand was stumbling, he's the one who greenlit the whole Teyana play after their men's line tanked 11% in the previous quarter. I have the board presentation deck from December 2025, the one labeled Q4 Recovery Strategy, Viral Celebrity Moments, and on slide 9 there's a mock-up of Teyana in the exact color we saw on the carpet, with projected media value of 42 million in earned impressions. Next to it in red ink, Ackroyd's handwritten note from the meeting, "Bigger drama equals bigger reset, approve." He didn't care if it looked good on her, he cared that people would talk, share, meme, and click through to buy the scarf version. They rushed into production the next week. That scarf sold out in 48 hours at 850 pounds a pop. And guess who got a quiet thank you bonus for the inspiration? Daniel Lee, the Chief Creative Officer, who was already under pressure to deliver after his first 2 years at Burberry, hadn't quite hit the numbers the shareholders wanted. Over at the Vera side, things were even more cutthroat because Vera sold the majority of her brand to WHP Global back in late 2024, and the new owners are all about quarterly growth and brand relevance in the algorithm age. Vera is still the founder and chief creative, but the real decisions now run through a guy named Mark Beckman at WHP, and according to a leaked email chain from their New York office, the day after BAFTA, Beckman wrote to Michelle Kessler-Sanders, "The Teyana moment delivered 27% search lift. Keep the pressure on for the next 3 nominations. We need more of this energy, even if the talent complains." Michelle, the same creative director who's been with Vera since the early days and has a reputation for never backing down on a silhouette, replied, "Understood, the color was non-negotiable per the deck you approved, and the client styling team was informed multiple times. They treated Teyana's body like a mannequin that could be adjusted in Photoshop later, not a real woman who had to breathe and move and face her kids the next day. I reached out to Marni Sinofonte, the woman who styles Beyoncé and has seen every trick in the book, and she agreed to talk off the record for 10 minutes last week. She told me, voice low like she was still looking over her shoulder, I've been in fittings where the brand rep says the sample is final and the celebrity just has to make it work, even if it pinches or pulls or makes her look 10 years older. We all have stories. Teyana's collar is just the one that got caught on camera this time." Lo Roach and I were texting that night, and Lo said, "If Zendaya ever gets put in something like that, he's walking off the job, bag or no bag." Lo Roach, the guy who put Zendaya on the map with those sculptural looks that actually flatter her, he posted that broken collarbone emoji the next day and then deleted it, but not before it got screen grabbed a million times. In a private group chat for elite stylists that I got access to, Law wrote at 2 a.m. "This is why clients lose trust in us. We fight for them in the room and then the brand overwrites everything for the gram." The chat has over 90 members now, all top names. And the day after BAFTA, it exploded with stories from Cannes last year, from the Met the year before, from every carpet where a star got sacrificed for the brand's moment. The agency pressure is the invisible chain nobody talks about in the interviews. WME and CAA and the rest have these quiet side deals with the luxury groups where if your client wears the approved look for the big events, the agency gets a finder's fee on the back end, sometimes as high as 15% of the sponsorship value. That means when Teyana's team tried to negotiate the collar down, the agency rep was on the phone to Brian Scher saying, "Don't rock the boat. The relationship with Burberry feeds 3 other clients this year alone. It's a web and everybody is caught in it, from the lowest junior stylist to the biggest star." Even Dara Allen, who styled Teyana for her Vanity Fair cover right before BAFTA and killed it with that cozy naked dressing vibe, told a friend in the industry, "I saw the BAFTA look coming and tried to warn them, but..." The money was already wired. The morning after the worst dressed lists dropped, Teyana made the decision in that hotel room that tells you everything about her Harlem roots. She called Wayman and Micah in, closed the door and said, "We're doing a full audit of every upcoming contract. If it has a non-negotiable creative clause, we walk. I'd rather do smaller bags and look like me than big bags and disappear." They started the process that day, and by the time she flew back to Los Angeles, she had already turned down a 7-figure jewelry deal for the Oscars because the pieces were too heavy and the styling note said, "Must wear the full set or no deal." That's the quiet rebellion happening behind the scenes, the one the tabloids miss while they're busy ranking the disasters. But the machine doesn't sleep. By the following week, Burberry was running ads with cropped images of the collar, calling it the statement that started the conversation. And Vera Wang's team dropped a lookbook for resort with similar dramatic necklines, using models who could actually handle the weight because they weren't real humans with real lives. Jonathan Akeroyd did a Bloomberg interview where he smiled and said, "We love when our collaborations spark culture," without once mentioning the woman who wore it. Mark Beckman at WHP sent out a company-wide email praising the brand resilience shown in the BAFTA coverage. The numbers went up, the stock ticked, the bonuses flowed, and Teyana was left explaining to her daughters why the internet was mean. This is the part that makes me the angriest, the way the industry eats its own and then acts shocked when the talent starts waking up. The stylists are organizing now. Wayman and Micah launched that private Discord that already has over 200 members trading contract templates and red flag lists. Marni Senofonte and Lo Roach are both in it under aliases at first, then they dropped the masks and started sharing real rider language that puts the power back with the talent. Body approval final, no alterations without client sign off, brand vision secondary to fit and comfort. Small words, huge shift if enough people use them. The conglomerates are watching though. Even though Burberry is still independent, it swims in the same waters as LVMH and Kering, and those guys have entire departments whose job is to monitor stylist sentiment and celebrity pushback. A source inside Kering told me they have a file on every major stylist with notes like cooperative or needs incentive or flight risk. Wayman and Micah got moved to needs incentive after BAFTA, and suddenly they started getting offers for smaller brand trips and gifting suites they never got before. The carrot to keep them quiet. Teyana's next move is the one I'm watching closest. She has the Santa Barbara Film Festival coming up, and insiders say she's going with a custom piece from a young black designer out of Harlem, no sponsorship, no veto power, just pure vision. The look is simple, powerful, all her, and she's paying for it herself because she's done letting somebody else's profit margin decide how she shows up. That's the only way out. When the talent starts voting with their own wallets and their own bodies and their own voices, it's slow, it's risky, but it's happening one quiet no at a time. The global entertainment machine doesn't want you to see this part. The part where the stars start waking up and the stylists start organizing and the money starts losing its grip. They want you focused on the pretty pictures and the savage memes and the worst dressed lists, so you never ask why a $350,000 gown can make a woman who danced her way out of poverty feel invisible on her own victory night. But I'm asking, and I'm showing you the text, the memos, the calls, the fear, the greed, the quiet rebellions, because this isn't just about one bad collar in London. This is about power, about who gets to decide what beauty looks like, about who pays when the algorithm demands drama, and about whether we keep letting it happen or finally say enough. I've been digging in this dirt for years, and every time I think I've hit the bottom, I find another layer, another boardroom, another seven-figure clause that treats human beings like billboards. Teyana will be fine, she's built different, but the next girl, the one who doesn't have the same resilience, she might not be. That's why I do this, why I sit here night after night pulling back the curtain, because somebody has to. I'm Strange, and this has been another raw, unfiltered episode of Dirty Hollywood. If you want more of this, the kind of investigation the mainstream won't touch, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss when the curtain gets yanked back. Drop in the comments right now, who do you want me to investigate next? Zendaya's styling team, the real story behind that Met Gala disaster last year? Or maybe a deep dive on the designer who keeps dressing everyone in regret. And if you've got insider info, leaked screenshots, stories from the fitting room, send them. Anonymity 100% guaranteed. Contacts are in the description. I read every single one. Until next time, stay dirty, stay curious, and never trust a color that big. Peace!